Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by local realtors Jim, Michael, and Morgan York of the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information on the local real estate market, featuring the leading experts in the real estate field.
Welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Morgan York with the York Group of Downing Fry, and we're joined today by our host Jim York and his guest Chris Mitchell, owner of Brightway Insurance.
Thank you, Morgan, for the introduction. Well, Chris, thanks for coming back on the show. For the viewers that haven't seen you on the show, tell us a little about yourself.
I'm an agency owner with Brightway Insurance here in Southwest Florida. Obviously we specialize in personal lines insurance. We're about almost 50 home companies.
So before we came on camera, you were talking about you're in Fort Myers, but you can handle anybody in Naples or wherever in the state of Florida, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quite a bit of our customers are here in Collier County.
And you're thinking about opening an office here in Naples, right?
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Well, that's good. So, we wanted to have you on the show today because, we had Hurricane Irma last year, and we just wanted to give people a little bit of an update. What's happening with insurance and almost and just give us a little update.
Well, claims are still coming in, even though it's hard to believe. It's almost been a year.
Right.
But right now, these statistics are a couple weeks old, but as of August 13th, I believe, the Office of Insurance Regulation said they were almost at 1 million claims, something like 997,000, and they estimate over $10 billion has been paid out. So, you can imagine the storm has caused quite a bit of damage. And we are still receiving claims. I mean, had 2 or 3 this week.
But why so late? It's almost a year.
Well, there can be a couple reasons. Number one, a lot of them are loss assessments. So condo associations are just now kind of getting around to repairing some things. And then also sometimes, the damage maybe doesn't, you can't see it yet because a lot of the rains might start. Like, for example, last weekend we had a pretty significant storm, a lot of wind, and it might, show you that you have some leaks in your roof. So.
In some of these assessments that are coming through from, communities or condo associations or whatever, and you put your claim in and they're going to pay some of it, right? Mm-hmm. Is that going to affect your rate next year?
Typically, no. There are a handful of companies where you get a claims-free discount, but in most instances, it's fairly insignificant, and most do not do that. So most of the time, no, you won't get penalized.
I'm getting that question a lot. That's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
yes.
No, you're okay.
So going forward, the rates, what do you see? If they, what was it, 10 billion, did you say?
Yeah, roughly at this point.
So how do they recoup that? Is the rates going to go up? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen some companies already take some rates. We probably haven't seen, the full extent of how Irma is going to impact the rates. So we'll see that probably most likely early next year. But, because, these claims are still coming in and they have to wait for rate changes from their reinsurers. So yeah, I mean, I think we're probably going to see the full extent of it next year. But I mean, over the thing that is on a positive note, prior to that storm hitting us, we had essentially 12 years free where we didn't have a direct hit, and the insurers were building themselves up in preparation for that type of hit. So that should mitigate the amount of the premium increases that take place for most companies.
But I know we've been on seminars we've done together. It's not necessarily Florida that they can be impacted. It's other areas too. So
yeah, the reinsurers.
The rates, right.
That's right. Yeah, they share the risks across the globe.
Right.
So while a direct hit might impact that area more, it is somewhat of a shared pool. Okay. So.
And I think the next thing, the big thing is how do people take care of like a tile roof? How long is the life expectancy of a tile roof, a shingle roof? Just talk a little bit about that. Appliances or or air conditioners? Well,
typically, roofs are a big topic of concern here from an insurance perspective,
right.
Just because they don't last as long. So, from an insurance perspective, your shingle roofs, typically carriers will take those up to 15 or 20 years. So you really, want to make sure those are in good condition. After the storm, what we saw, I mean, it wasn't infrequent that, home buyer would buy a home, and after the fact, the other inspection from the insurance carrier would show that the roof was not in very good condition. And what insurance companies can do is, of course, require you to replace your roof, which at this point, even though the waiting time is not as long, it's still typically a couple months.
Right.
Now, tile roofs, they last longer. Typically insurance carriers will accept those up to 30, and then within that you have some variance. Some might take it up to 40 or 50, and some not as long, maybe 25. But those, of course, the prices, as you might expect, they've gone up significantly since the storm. We've seen some instances where they've been double the price. So, you just want to make sure those are in good condition. If tiles are broken, sometimes you can get into a situation where they aren't matching, so you'll be required to get a new roof. So, you just want to make sure, if you are buying a home, you get a correct full home inspection, and maybe discuss that with the inspector.
Yeah, because then you have your own inspector go out too on top of it all.
Yeah, that's right. The insurance companies use inspection companies, and they inspect every single family home. So they will do that exterior. Not always on the inside, but they'll always do an exterior inspection.
And how about air conditioner and a hot water tank?
Now those, from an insurance perspective,
Right.
they like to see those less than 15 years old. You could get into a situation where maybe yours is 14 to 15. You really need to make sure that they're running well and they've got a lot of life left, because if an insurance company does in fact do an interior inspection, or you have to get what's called a 4-point inspection from an insurance policy, that can help you determine in what shape that's in. So they could come out and say, this air conditioner, for example, is 15 years old.
Right.
Look, it's really not running well. It doesn't have much life left. They could have you replace that.
Now, the typical question is that, we do a lot of business, obviously, in the Naples area, my son, daughter, and I, is some people, we recommend you as an agent, or we get a quote from you, or they get a quote from you. But sometimes other people we've talked to always go with the lowest price, okay? So explain to the viewers here, what do they need to be looking for when they getting a quote from different vendors or insurance agents, I guess?
Yeah, there's several things you should look for. I mean, it's a commonly held, saying you get what you pay for.
Right.
Now, there are some instances where you are getting the best coverage, the best carrier,
That's
best
right,
premium.
yeah.
But a lot of times that's not the case. So, the things you want to make sure of, you want to make sure you have replacement cost on your personal items. You want to make sure you're insured correctly. In other words, how much coverage do you have? Maybe ask your agent, hey, how did you get to this figure? And pool cages, that's a big one. If you have a pool and you've got an aluminum cage over it, you want to make sure how it's covered, because most insurance companies require you endorse that on for hurricanes. And within that, they can cover it differently. Maybe they cover the entire structure in the screen. Maybe they only cover the structure. Maybe they depreciate it, things like that. Ordinance and law is another big one. You want to make sure you have that, because if you've got partial damage on your roof, for example, maybe only 25% of it's damaged. Well, if you have ordinance and law coverage, that can be triggered to help get a whole new roof. Those water damage, how's water damage covered? There are lots of questions you absolutely should ask, and you should tell your agent if they're not asking, hey, I might, if you're in a condominium and you're a seasonal resident,
Right.
oftentimes, you might rent that out because you can obviously get pretty good rent for a few months. You have to have that policy rated that way in order to make sure you're covered. So there are a lot of things that go into, an insurance policy, a lot of moving parts. So you want to make sure to volunteer that information and ask those questions when you have it.
And replacement costs too, right?
That's right, yeah, especially on your personal property. That essentially means that if you had a loss, if let's say you did not have that coverage, you would have everything depreciated. So you can imagine that would do to how much you recover. 10-year-old couch, 8-year-old TV, on and on. That can really affect what you get back from that claim.
So I have two final questions, okay? Lots of people pay cash in the Naples, our area here. I think it's 65% of the people.
Yeah.
So they're not required to get insurance because they're paying cash. If you have a mortgage, you're required to get insurance. Well, the first question is, when should the person that's paying cash obtain insurance? How long can they wait?
Well, ideally you want to obviously have insurance in place when you buy the house.
That's right.
But understandably, there's a lot of things going on. You absolutely don't want to wait more than 30 days. The reason for that is most carriers have a guideline where once you pass the 30-day window, it's called a lapse period, you will not be allowed to write that policy with them for another year. So what that means is you're going to be going to another carrier who, quite frankly, you're going to be paying more than you should have. It may not be as, maybe not a well-established carrier as you could have been with. And the reason they do that is because there could be existing damage there. And unfortunately, our industry, there's just a lot of fraud that goes on. So people might obtain a home insurance policy and then file a claim for damage that was there. And in last year, when Irma was approaching, of course, if you don't have insurance, everything starts going through your head. Well, maybe
Right.
I'm going to have a significant amount of damage. You try to get insurance. They don't want to start doing that. So that's why they want you to take responsibility up front and get that policy, because it shows them a pride of ownership of your home.
And then we just had a major hurricane. We didn't have one, would you say, 12 for 12 years?
Yeah.
So the key, I guess, that you've said in our seminars is the binding coverage during hurricane season as soon as you put a contract in or have a contract.
Yeah, you essentially want to bind it on the closing date, obviously.
Right.
Now, what happens is, if a storm's coming through, the carriers have certain coordinates, latitude and longitude, where
Right.
as soon as a storm gets into that area, they immediately stop binding. So, if you're going to close on a home, you want to make sure you bind it far enough out where you can get that. The problem is, let's say your closing wasn't for 2 or 3 weeks, and the storm hits a week before your closing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes carriers don't open up for a week or two after if it was a
or
direct
longer,
hit.
right?
That's right, because they're assessing the damage and they're not taking it. So, the best case is not to wait to the last minute.
In the bind something, what do you have to do?
As an insurance agent, we have authority to bind policies.
That's right.
So that's, essentially, as long as we have all your information, and some carriers require payment, most don't.
That's right.
But yeah, we have the authority to bind them.
Chris, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you tuning in, and look for the York Real Estate team for your next purchase or sale. Thank you.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco Island, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group, associated with the #1 brokerage in Southwest Florida, Downing Fry Realty, which produces yearly real estate transactions of over $1 billion. Jim, Michael, and Morgan make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty, with over $275 million in sales transactions, along with offering over 25 combined years' experience in the local market. The Yorks can offer the experience and trust you need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website at www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.